Franck Lawally Show. And now, for a needle of truth in a haystack of lies.
If you don't see that everyone is a puppet, if you don't see the level of puppetry that's going on, the level of 24/7 brainwash, and someone had mentioned this earlier in the year, the people in power want the people that aren't in power to fear, to live in fear. I have almost had to stop. The Zika virus thing is the latest and greatest thing to be coming into the news about every mosquito.
Shrunken head babies or something like that.
Shrunken head babies. And which is, okay, just like Ebola and just like swine flu and just like bird flu and just like all these things, they're valid diseases, but throughout history, we've had that. So what? We're going to live in fear. It's just a total live in fear.
Now, I have to be honest. I haven't thought about it from that angle. And where do you turn to for the solution? Right, government. And it's all purposeful for that reason. If you get us all riled up, where are we going to go with our fears? We're going to go to some big solution, which is dangerous, by the way. When anybody's offering whitewashed solution, that's not within the human capability. We're really in a dangerous time between the hyperbolic speech, the demagoguery on every side, the actual reality of the dire straits. There are real problems. People are facing real pocketbook problems. So the power structures are feeling threatened. That's always a dangerous time too. It's really a powder keg. People say that, but I really see evidence to support that.
Because we desire it now. You know what I mean? I think that the social media and the constant update on what's the thing that threatens us most in the world, and the spoon feeding us candidates and all that sort of thing. It has risen to a level of perfection that now it even threatens itself. Because I think what you've seen with Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, I'd say Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, is they really, Hillary Clinton has all this, and again, maybe this sounds like I'm right wing, but to ignore the fact that the Clintons in general have had just the deck of cards falling down every time, only to have them supported by ridiculous infrastructure, and it's not like little mistakes. These are bad people. Well, she is a bad person. The people that are her security detail will tell you that. You can see it. You can
see
FBI
director, people with
the FBI director. Yeah. The thing with the copying and pasting emails. If that was anybody else, copying and pasting out classified documents, send this to me. They have the evidence of stupidity, at the very least, but should render her as not an option. You know what? Hey, I've got some stuff going on. There's some validity to
You're right about it.
I'll run for president again.
Right.
For a non-viable candidate, billions of dollars supporting this candidate. Jeb Bush is another great example. I think Donald Trump is a situation in which this media, it eats itself. So who didn't know that he was going to say stupid stuff? I mean, come on. You either like the stupid stuff, you either say, okay, this guy says stupid stuff, and I like that he's a go-getter and he's going to get it done, and you believe in that wholesale, and you just accept the fact. That is not a new thing.
And let me ask you a question in regards to him, and I'm looking for nothing more than just your gut instinct. Forget about the punditry and all the political, hackery. What on a human level are people collectively grabbing onto with him? What do you think it is? He is Teflon.
I think a good bit of his rhetoric is things that, people want to hear. People want to hear, we're going to sort this mess out, and I've built billions of dollars worth of business, and so I have the ability to do that. I think they want to hear that. As far as they want to hear, we're going to get immigration under control, I think they want to hear that. I think the way that they want to hear that is in a slightly more palatable way.
Apparently not.
I think the way that you've disrespected the Midwest, the sort of they portray these people as toothless and brainless and mindless, but they're not. These are people that work jobs that maybe aren't at the upper echelon of education, but are tired of not having jobs and are tired of seeing what they see as a real issue. Immigration has been an issue, and it has taken jobs away from people that, at least in the country, rural area where I live, it has taken jobs away.
That's a real thing.
You have allowed this flow of workers, but you have laws in order to control that so that you don't have breakdown of society. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have people all of a sudden start to hate immigrants because they don't have a job. And is it because they're racist? I mean, come on. People are naturally biased to all sorts of things everybody is. Take the most the most admirable candidate.
True. Absolutely.
And you can find bias of he doesn't like white uneducated Christians. That's
it's a
right
great,
now.
It's a great point. It really depends on what kind of bias you want to villainize, because it's out there everywhere. NPR guy in the tight skinny jeans and the Upper East Side, he's hating on people. Trust me. I mean, when he wakes up in the morning, he's got hate in his heart. It's just for different people and different reasons.
Yeah.
So it's insightful what you're saying.
So to say that he owns hate.
Let me ask you another question, because I'm really curious about this. This has been haunting my mind in like a curious way. So one of the things that rattled me, and few things do, but one of the things that rattled me recently is that verdict that came back by way of that Planned Parenthood video maker. That was shocking to the bones. But here's my thought on that, beyond just the initial thing, the injustice of it all is almost takes your breath away. But I want to know, so we've been seeing patterns of the fact that just law and order is breaking down. It's breaking down, and a lot of that's the power that are becoming so audacious that they're not even giving the illusion of. You can agree with this regardless of your politics. If you're a black guy in the city and you think cops are shooting you no longer believe in law. If you're a guy like me with my politics and you see clearly this guy is a threat to the powerful, they have millions of dollars vested interest in Planned Parenthood, and this guy threatened them. Dinesh D'Souza did time in prison because he threatened the powerful. So the law is breaking down, and people don't realize how dangerous that is, because once people completely lose faith in justifiable
there's no question
things
that law is no longer law, because I think that the lawmakers themselves are not even holding themselves accountable to the law.
So
I think as far as the Planned Parenthood thing is concerned, I think that whole thing on both sides was over-engineered to accelerate debates. In other words, I think it was made to look worse than it was. And on the other side, they've spun it into completely ignore the facts. There's no grain of truth to that.
Which, by the way,
believe
how
it at
do you
all.
come to that conclusion when you watch the videotape? I mean, how do you come to the conclusion that there's
that's what
no
I'm saying.
smoke?
You have to on the left side of that, or on the other side of that, the against argument, you have to completely deny any validity to any part of that argument, which you can't. And again, I always come back to this. Why? All these different empires that have fallen, Ottoman, Babylonian, Roman, all these different empires, it gets to a point where, things are good, things get happy and you get lulled into a false sense of security, and the Walmart's open and everyone's happy. If you stop thinking about Kanye, you stop thinking about how angry you are at Donald Trump, and you really think about your situation and how the government is playing into that situation, and what part of your problems are generated by bureaucracy, bureaucratic inefficiencies, bureaucratic lies. It is a heavy portion to swallow. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where it's like all of a sudden, if you really allow yourself to wake up, you realize
government bigger.
Yeah, government bigger.
So I want to know what your thoughts are on this as well. I'm watching the last Democratic debate. They had like a town hall, and I actually like the format because there's only three people. So they brought them out individually. They peppered them with questions with that empty suit, and then they opened it up to the plants that are asking questions from them. But nonetheless, even though I know I was looking at Kabuki Theater, it was a nice format. Okay, so I'm listening to them, and I'm clocking with Bernie. I'm clocking with Bernie until he gets to the solution, which is always the thing with Bernie. So he's laying out a problem. He's like, there's corruption, there's all that. And I'm like, oh, darn right, man. Preach it, Bernie. And then he's like, so here's the solution, more government. So here's my question to you.
That's a pretty good impression.
Why is it that people don't see that, even if I agree that there's definitely corporate money that shouldn't be there, there's definitely corruption, there's insurance fraud, there's pharmaceutical shenanigans, all that stuff is real. But I don't understand why people don't trace the nucleus back to government. Because all right, so Bernie's saying there's all these people being bribed. Who are they bribing? Are they just bribing like aberrations? They're bribing politicians. It's a government problem. I don't see why Bernie, he's always pointing out some boogeyman. The nucleus is government. I don't understand why the millennial or the Black Lives Matter or whoever, you name it, why do they never follow the breadcrumbs back to government? Why is it always this boogeyman? Like, they're thinking some guy like me with like no melanin in his skin is like hatching grisly plans against him. It's the freaking government. They're running their cities. They're running their police departments.
Yeah, look at Chicago and Detroit. Just look at Chicago and Detroit.
Why aren't they connecting those dots?
Pick a couple cities that are completely under Democratic everything control. In fact, I went to dinner with last night. We have a school board here locally in this town which I live, which will remain nameless, but it's filled with overpaid Democrats. You know what I mean? All that think that, you know, the answer to that city school, which is way too big, is split it up. Make it easier to manage, because all you've got is these guys who are lining their pockets. We just had a big scandal. And the irony is they didn't fire one of the actors that's still in the thing and still getting his $100.
He just shifts it around. Yep.
He gets a different job, different title, $170,000 salary, and it's like,
why don't they ever realize that?
I don't know. You know, he references Nordic countries all the time. You know, it's a big thing with Bernie Sanders is how here's these countries that have done social. When you get into big economies of scale like the United States, and you look at our Constitution, all of a sudden you realize, well, the problem is the way this country was founded and the way this country is supposed to exist, we've gotten away from that. So the problem is over the last 40 years, we've allowed the way that this country functions, which is the only way that it can based on the Constitution, to become untenable, because we've allowed this collusion of government and big business to co-opt the free
which
market,
was never
which we
meant
don't
to
have
be,
anymore, which co-opt banking, co-opt all these things, which now you have banking is corrupt, the food system's corrupt, the government's corrupt. And so you now have a situation in which, do I want things to be really nice like they are in Scandinavia? They aren't as nice as he purports.
Yeah, that's the irony.
You know, so,
they're all going bankrupt.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Do I want, you know, does my faith sort of require a benevolence towards my fellow man? Certainly. And on a personal level, that's not a problem. On a governmental level, it has become a problem, and it's not enough. That's a big problem. Like, we aren't doing anything to really solve the problems. We do have starving people. We do have uneducated children. We do have this. Name all these things. And it isn't that we're not being benevolent. We're being benevolent to the tune of, you know, billions of dollars here and billions of dollars there.
The tip of the spear is corrupt.
It's the tip. It's the tip of the spear. And so no one wants to really deal. I love half of Bernie. I watched the Bernie Sanders video last night on Facebook and liked it, you know, much to the chagrin of immediately I get, are you voting for Bernie Sanders? You know what? At this point, if I vote for, and you can name anyone that's running on either side, does it solve any of the problems? We're spending all this time arguing and all this breath arguing. When it just gets back to the thing that the only thing that I can really do, because I don't think my vote, I literally am disillusioned to the point where I think that if I vote for Bernie, you know, I do think that Bernie Sanders is preaching his own thing that he believes will work. I don't think it'll work, but I appreciate that he's at least honest about it. You know,
I do too. I've said that for a long time.
And has been for years. It fixes anything? No. I think that it gets us into a more quagmire. Okay, so go to Donald Trump. Do I think that that's going to fix anything? Honestly, no. You know, ironically, the candidate that I like the most on the right, or probably the most out of anyone that's running, and Carly Fiorina. So we need to be able to afford all the benevolence that we're offering, and we need to offer better benevolence. You know, so that means, you know, we want to do Medicare, we want to do this, we want to do that, which I think, you know, and again, the problem is on the right, on the ultra free market side, they want to grenade the government. They want the government to be a quarter of the size that it is. And do I think that for a second...
you're talking about me. That's me. That's what I want.
But and the libertarians too think that. But do I think for a second that anyone's going to allow that to happen? No. You know, you know what I'm saying? I mean, do I think that the Fed is going to go away? No. Do I think that the IRS is going to go away? No.
Do you see any scenario in which, and this is just my curiosity talking, do you see any scenario based on the cards on the table right now in which that could go away?
I feel your frustration. It's not that I'm the dissent that, you know, I want it this way. It isn't that. It isn't that I don't want what the founders wanted, and it isn't that when I watch The Patriot I don't get, you know, all sentimental and for what we had. The reality is we haven't had what we had for 20, 30 years.
No, that's a sound point. But you're saying based on the cards on the table, you don't see a hand played that
no, there's no hand that gets
bureaucracy going away, freedom enhancing. That's not even possible.
No, it does not. It does not happen. And I'm telling you,
what about reset?
I do think that a majority of people, if we sat down and had a conversation, a majority of the people, of the proletariat, of the people that are out there do want similar things. In other words, do want to live in peace.
I believe
do
that
want
too.
to have a job and play their part. And are willing, like me and like you and like everyone else, to pay their taxes and to have a certain amount of that, provide things that we like.
But we just have different villains. It seems like we just have different villains. That's the conclusion I've come to. I watch Bernie and I find myself shaking my head. But when he starts creating villains, I don't agree with his villains. I agree with his point, but I don't agree with who he blames. And I think that's the American people's attitude in general. We all kind of clock with the problems. We just don't clock with, like, the solutions or the people to blame for the problems. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that we get back to the point that it has just become a demonization, blame game, a flame game, that every day it's wake up and exacerbate the problem. I was driving behind someone yesterday that said Islam is the fastest growing religion. Want to know why? Ask a Muslim. And I thought to myself, boy, I'd love to just pull this guy over and just talk to him.
Yeah. Me too.
Because you could not have a worse PR problem for a religion. As far as if we're talking about being a Muslim or Islam or however you want to word it. The thing is, do we have globally, not in the United States, globally, an issue with Muslims actively
100% yes.
trying to murder people? Yeah,
absolutely.
And so when you say, I want a moratorium on Jews, which that's the analogy, is that's what Hitler did, and there's no correlation with that. You have an actual problem where the problem isn't Sikhs or Christians or Jews or whatever. The problem is Muslims. All you did there was breathe a little context. That's all you did. I mean, that's a fact. And we are completely devoid of any kind of context.
Right.
When we have the Bernie conversation, when Bernie says, I want to do this, I want everything that Bernie wants, pretty much. The problem is I can't figure out how to do it. Financially.
And neither can Bernie.
Neither can Bernie.
He's like $8 trillion.
I said this morning, you could run Bert or Ernie for president and probably have Bert get some votes, possibly win. Say you have I'm talking about the puppet, Bert and Ernie. From Sesame Street. You could have Bert win.
Get some votes.
All of a sudden, you got to be like, well, wait, this dude's a puppet. Oh, well, who's the puppeteer? And I'm ready to have Puppet Bert for the president because I think that you know. Because
your point is that's exactly what's happening. We're just not admitting it.
RockLawleyMusic.com